You ever look at a piece of rusted out quarter panel and think, I could probably just fix this with some heavy duty prayer and a bit of duct tape?
I've seen your truck, Tiger. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's holding the passenger door on.
Hey, that's structural duct tape. Very rare. But seriously, when you get into automotive welding, it's a different beast than building a garden gate or a shop table. You aren't just sticking two hunks of thick angle iron together. You're performing surgery on a patient made of tin foil that's been living in a salt bath for 10 years.
It really is a specialized world. I think most people think, I'll just get a MIG welder and go to town. But today we're really peeling back the layers on fabrication for cars. Everything from the thin sheet metal of the body to the heavy-duty framework that actually keeps the wheels from falling off.
And the mistakes? Oh, I've made them all. I once tried to weld a patch into a floor pan without cleaning the underside. I didn't realize the previous owner had used some kind of rubberized undercoating that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. I spent 20 minutes chasing a fire around the cabin with a wet rag.
See, this is why people listen. For the cautionary tales. Let's start with the basics for our listeners who are staring at a hole in their fender. If you're getting into auto repair, you usually have two main paths, MIG and TIG. Why is MIG the gold standard for the garage guy?
It's the speed and the forgiveness. Metal inert gas, MIG, is basically a hot glue gun for metal. You've got that continuous wire feed, so you aren't constantly stopping to swap rods or fumbled around with a filler rod. When you're under a car, contorted like a pretzel, you only have one hand free anyway. MIG lets you point and shoot.
But it's not just lazy welding, right? There's a versatility factor.
Absolutely, you can jump from 24-gauge sheet metal on a door skin to a quarter-inch structural plate on a frame just by twisting a couple of knobs. It's the Swiss Army knife of the shop, and this is the part people skip, you have to match your wire and your gas to the job. If you're doing bodywork, you want that thin 0.8 millimeters wire. If you go too thick with the wire, you're trying to kill a fly with a sledgehammer. You'll just blow holes through the metal before the puddle even forms.
Okay, let's talk about that blowing holes thing. That seems to be the universal nightmare for beginners. You're working on a beautiful 1967 Mustang, you touch the torch to the metal, and pop. Now there's a hole the size of a nickel where there used to be a pinhole.
It's heart-wrenching. The trick with thin automotive steel is heat management. If you try to run a long, beautiful bead like you're welding a trailer hitch, that panel is going to warp until it looks like a Pringles chip. You have to do what I call the hesitant dance. A little tack here, move to the other side, a little tack there. You let the metal breathe.
So skipping around the panel?
Precisely. If that metal gets uncomfortable to touch with your bare hand, you're moving too fast. I've seen guys get impatient, weld a 6-inch strip, and then they spend 3 days with a hammer and dolly trying to get the oil can pop out of the metal. You want to keep it cool enough that the molecules don't decide to get up and rearrange the furniture.
Rearrange the furniture. I like that. But what about TIG? I see the high-end restoration shops using TIG for everything. Is it worth the headache for a hobbyist?
It looks like magic, doesn't it? Taiji gives you the cleanest, prettiest welds, and the heat-affected zone is tiny. But it's like playing the drums while doing a crossword puzzle. You've got a torch in one hand, a filler rod in the other, and a foot pedal controlling the heat. If you're welding a roll cage or a custom intake manifold, TIG is the king. But for a rusty floor pan, you'll be there until the next century.
Plus, I imagine cleaning the metal for TIG is a nightmare.
Oh, TIG is a prima donna. If there's a speck of dust or a hint of old paint within 3 miles, the weld will spit back at you. MIG is a bit more of a blue-collar worker. It'll chew through a little bit of character on the metal, though you should still clean it like you're prepping for surgery.
Let's shift gears to the scary stuff. Frames. I feel like this is where the stakes get real. If a fender weld fails, the car looks ugly. If a frame weld fails, well, you're having a very bad day on the highway.
This is where we stop playing and start measuring. Welding a frame is about penetration and structural integrity. One mistake people make is not beveling the joints. You can't just butt 2 thick pieces of steel together and hopes the top layer of honey holds them. You have to grind a V into that joint so the weld can sit right in the heart of the metal.
And the prep work. I see people trying to weld over rust bubbles on a frame. That's essentially trying to weld air, isn't it?
It's useless. If you don't hear that crisp, bacon frying sound and see a clean, molten puddle, you're just stacking bird droppings on a cracker. You have to grind back to shiny, healthy steel. And for the love of all things holy, check your ground clamp. I once saw a guy wonder why his welder was acting up, only to find he'd clamped onto a painted bracket. He was basically trying to weld through a layer of Krylon.
I've seen you do that once, don't deny it.
Maybe once. The point is, framework requires a machine with enough oomph. A little 1 in 10 volt hobby welder might be fine for a lawnmower, but for a truck frame, you want something that can really push the juice. 1/4 inch steel needs heat, or you're just making a cold lap that'll snap the first time you hit a pothole.
Okay, let's talk about the new kid on the block that I've been seeing in your feed lately, laser welding. It looks like something out of Star Wars. Is that actually viable for automotive, or is it just a fancy toy?
It's wild. Imagine a beam of light that sews metal together with zero distortion. No grinding needed afterward. For high-end customization, it's a game changer. But the cost, well, you could buy a decent used car for the price of the power supply. For most of us, the MiG is still the champion of the driveway.
Fair enough. So, if someone is listening and they've got a project car sitting under a tarp and they're terrified of ruining it, what's the first step?
Go to the local scrapyard. Find a hood or a door from a trashed 90s sedan. Cut it into pieces. Now, try to put it back together. Practice your tack and move technique until you can join two pieces without the metal bowing up like a scared cat. You have to build the muscle memory for the trigger and the vision to see the puddle through the helmet.
And don't forget the safety gear. I remember the time you decided to just do one quick tack without your gloves on.
My hands look like a topographical map of the Swiss Alps for a week. Sunburn from an arc weld is a special kind of misery. Wear the leather, wear the hood, and for goodness sake, make sure you have a fire extinguisher that isn't 20 years past its expiration date.
Good advice. So the big takeaway today, automotive welding is 90% preparation and 10% actually pulling the trigger.
Nail on the head. If you spend 3 hours cleaning, fitting, and clamping, the welding takes 5 minutes and looks like a pro did it. If you spend 5 minutes prepping, you'll spend 3 hours crying and grinding.
I think crying and grinding is the name of your memoir, Tiger.
It's a work in progress. But honestly, there's no feeling like standing back and seeing a solid, clean repair where there used to be a hole you could throw a cat through. It's about bringing something back to life.
That's a good place to leave it. Whether you're patching a floor or reinforcing a frame, respect the metal, and it'll keep you on the road.
And keep the fire extinguisher handy. Seriously.
Thanks for hanging out in the Tiger Den. Next week, we're talking about the black magic of metallurgy, why some steels hate being heated and others crave it.
See you then. Go burn some wire.